The State Department is quickly backing away from controversial comments John Kerry made about working with Syria.
The Secretary of State mentioned in an interview with Margaret Brennan that the U.S. may be willing to negotiate with the Assad regime in Syria.
But to get the Assad regime to negotiate, we're going to have to make it clear to him that there is a determination by everybody to seek that political outcome and change his calculation about negotiating. That's underway right now. And I am convinced that with the efforts of our allies and others, there will be increased pressure on Assad.
And you'd be willing to negotiate with him?
Well, we have to negotiate in the end.
And Margaret Brennan joins us now from Lausanne, Switzerland. Margaret, let's talk about that interview you did. You looked very surprised when John Kerry said he'd be willing to negotiate with Assad.
Well, he didn't directly answer the question. Right after that answer you just played, he then backed away and reiterated this idea of trying to reignite a diplomatic strategy. But, I mean, frankly, it's been clear, it's no secret that Secretary Kerry has wanted to do a lot more in Syria to end this war, in large part because he believes extremists like ISIS will only get stronger the longer that President Bashar al-Assad stays in power. And those comments he made were front page news here in Europe and throughout the Middle East because he seemed to suggest that Assad should have a direct role in negotiating the future of his country. But in reality, U.S. policy is only slightly different, which is that the U.S. will negotiate with Assad's representatives, not the man himself, and only if he agrees to exit. But Vlad, that's really just a hopeful strategy more than a realistic one because the rebels fighting Assad have been really fractured. You haven't had a single country intervene to protect civilians or the rebels fighting Assad and trying to get him to leave. And now that military training that the U.S. started just began this month. So really, there's not a lot of pressure on Assad to negotiate, even if the U.S. wanted to right now.
Margaret, let's talk about the reaction from the State Department. What kind of solution do they want in Syria to end the civil war?
Well, President Obama, their boss, has been very reluctant to intervene, and that has limited some of the options for American diplomats. What we know and what Secretary Kerry said in that interview with me was that he's trying to reignite a diplomatic process, this time with some Arab allies, to really squeeze Assad, try to talk him into leaving power. But the reality is the fighting on the ground is going to determine just how much pressure he feels. What we know is that there is talk at the State Department, at the Pentagon, within U.S. policy circles about maybe giving more protection to the rebels. That is talk of a no-fly zone or a safe zone, basically protect them from the Syrian Air Force so that it could tip the balance of power on the ground. If that happens, that could change things, and that could get Assad to negotiate. But the State Department's attempts here haven't gone very far.
All right, Margaret Brennan there in Lausanne, Switzerland. Thanks, Margaret.